Hello and welcome to another episode of Thick Slices and Deep Cuts. This evening I'll be discussing the first half of the catalog of the legendary gods of heavy metal, Black Sabbath. So I'll be covering the first 15 years, or more specifically 1970 through 1983. This is the era that I am super familiar with whenever I listen to this band, or at least 95% of the time that I listen to this band. That is the era that I go to. So they have 20 albums in total, and if we have time at the end, I will get to everything and maybe just do an ultimate ranking. But really, the albums that I love and the albums that I listen to and know inside and out, the Sabbath that when I want to hear Sabbath, I want to hear anything that they did on their first 10 albums, and actually their first 11, and I'll get to that here in a second. But just a legendary band. I think they don't need too much more of an introduction. They hail from Birmingham, England, but for purposes of time, I'll get right to it. So we've got 11 albums here that I'm going to rank from 70 to 83. So here we go. Coming in at number 11 from 1976, I've got their 7th album, Technical Ecstasy. This was their 7th album in 7 years. And they had just gone through a string of what I would call 6 classic albums. So their career started with 6 classics. And so at this point in time, you know, what can you do? You're doing your 7th album in 7 years. You've set the bar so high. So they put out this album, Technical Ecstasy, and they're changing styles on this one. They sort of changed styles on their previous 2 albums, but it worked. On this one, it does not work. It's almost like they're going for more mainstream rock radio type things. I think the first song, Backstreet Kids, kind of starts out with a pretty heavy galloping rhythm, kind of like Led Zeppelin's Achilles' Last Stand or Immigrant Song or something like that. And it's okay. It's possibly the best thing on here, and it's okay. And it just kind of goes downhill from there, in my opinion. You Won't Change Me is trying to be catchy. It just sounds inferior to music they put out previously. It's all right. Bill Ward's singing. It just sounds like this hokey song. It's just cringeworthy. Gypsy, a lot of these songs have a moment here or there, but just as a complete song, none of these songs really work. All Moving Parts Stand Still. I don't know. I feel like you've got to lower your expectations to enjoy this album. Rock and Roll Doctor. It sounds like a song Kiss would have written. Black Sabbath are not Kiss. She's Gone. I don't know. Dirty Women is probably the only other one. It's not a perfect song, but it does have some moments, I suppose. So, you know, again, Backstreet Kids is all right, and maybe Dirty Women, maybe. But for the most part, this is of my favorite era of this band, whether it's the 70s or these first, 11 albums. This is by far my least favorite. I do come back to it from time to time. I keep thinking maybe it'll sound better. Maybe I just wasn't listening to it in the right frame of mind when I heard it. But every time I give this another shot, I'm just always constantly just disappointed by the fact that these songs are just, I don't know if they just, I think at this point the band was always into heavy drug usage and just a lot of turmoil, but they were still able to write good albums. I think at this point it really did catch up to them, and I just think that they were creatively bankrupt. They just, the well had run dry at this point. But so there you go. At number 11, I've got from 76, their 7th album, Technical Ecstasy. And coming in at number 10, this is, I stretched this from their first 10 albums to their first 11, so I can include this one. Born Again from 83. There's the cool thing about this is you've got Ian Gillan on vocals for one album. So Ian Gillan, for those who don't know, is the infamous lead singer of Deep Purple. And by the way, the background of this obnoxious album cover is purple. Coincidence? I think not. The demon baby in the purple background. Such an obnoxious album cover. I love it. This album is what I would call this is a mess of an album. This is a train wreck of an album. But it's a train wreck of an album that I like to listen to. So, this is the only album with Ian Gillan. The first song, Trash, is pretty fast. The production on here is muddy and terrible. And Ian Gillan is just wailing. He's just wailing. He's way up there, wailing. And Trash is kind of fast and crazy. I don't know how good of a song it is. It's okay. But then you go into a 2-minute weird synthesizer song for track 2 called Stonehenge. I mean, it screams of Spinal Tap all the way. Why you would put that there at number 2 is beyond me, and yet I listen to it. Disturbing the Priest, Ian's wailing away and laughing like a crazy man, but I like that song. Disturbing the Priest is cool. Zero the Hero, I got into that song through a Cannibal Corpse cover when I was younger. That song's catchy. Born Again, the title track is moody. I do like that song, and I do like Keep It Warm to end it. It's got a good, it's slower mid-pace, but it's catchy and it's got good soloing. And by the way, Tony Iommi tears it up on here with the solos. So this is a heavy album. It's a train wreck. Sometimes it feels like it's coming off the wheels, but I do like this album. You get some not so great songs out here, but for '83, it doesn't sound totally '80s or anything. So at least it's the last classic era Sabbath album, in my opinion. It's the last one with Bill Ward on drums, and it's the last one with Geezer Butler on bass for some time. The only one with Ian Gillan, and after this, the band sort of broke up, and Tony Iommi went to do a solo album, which they turned into a Black Sabbath album. But to me, this was the end of Sabbath. You can say that they did an album in '92, and '09, and '13 that you could maybe say are Sabbath albums, but otherwise, aside from those here and there, this was to me the last real Sabbath album. So it's a mess. It's a train wreck. It's coming off the rails, but I still enjoy it. So at number 10 from '83, I have Born Again. Okay, coming in at number 9 from 1978, their final one with Ozzy for many, many, many years, I've got Never Say Die. Again, just total band turmoil, and people really hate on this album, and I don't even disagree with people who hate on this album, but I do like the title track, Never Say Die. It's catchy, it's straight ahead. What are some other songs out here? A Hard Road's pretty good, though. I think there are a lot of underrated deep cuts on here. I think people dismiss a lot of the good stuff on here. A Hard Road's catchy. Junior's Eyes is good. Shockwave's alright. Air Dance, they brought in like this jazz influence. By the way, Black Sabbath were kind of a progressive band. I mean, they were a heavy metal band first and foremost, but they were a progressive band. And Air Dance is just them doing like a jazz thing. I kind of like it. Some people hate it. I thought it was at least interesting, if nothing else. Over to You's catchy. So you've got, Never Say Die, A Hard Road, Junior's Eyes, Over to You, Air Dance, Shockwave. Swinging the Chain, Bill Ward sings, it's not that great. And Johnny Blade is pretty hilariously awful. But if you really step back and listen to this album, while it doesn't sound super Sabbathy, it's still that classic lineup for one more album, and it's underrated. I think there are enough good tracks on here that you can rail on this album and I still reach for this occasionally, because I'm not totally burnt out on this album like I am on all the classics. So I find myself listening to Never Say Die quite a bit. So there you go. Coming in at number 9 from '78, I've got Never Say Die. Okay, the great thing about Sabbath is that the final 8 are pretty much all classics. So I just went through and talked about 3 albums that had their faults and problems, but I still, maybe not so much technical ecstasy, but Born Again and Never Say Die, they have their problems, but I still find enjoyment in listening to them. These final 8 are just classics. So here we go. Classic number 1. Coming in at number 8, I've got from '81, I've got The Mob Rules. Or Mob Rules. This is the second one with Ronnie Dio. This is also the first one with Vinny Appice on drums. You still got Geezer and Tony Iommi, so this is a very cool era of the band as well. I think the Ozzy stuff is the best, but Ronnie is the superior singer, I believe. I just think that the band had been in a rut for several years, and when Dio shows up, I just feel like Tony Iommi got so inspired, started writing good stuff again, and they've got Martin Birch producing at this point. He's the Iron Maiden guy, other bands, but I certainly think that helped. A song like Voodoo is great. I think Ronnie just makes that song as a lead man. Whereas like Ozzy followed the riffs, I feel like Ronnie figures out what key the riff's in, and then he goes off and does his own little witchy, mystical thing. Sign of the Southern Cross is classic. So you've got track 2, Voodoo, track 3, Sign of the Southern Cross. Man, it doesn't get any better than that. The title track to Mob Rules. Underrated track for me is Country Girl. I think the title track kind of turns people off. That's a cool song. Falling Off the Edge of the World is a faster, good one. I think Over and Over is a good way to end it. Good soloing by Tony Iommi. This is a very cool album. It's coming in at number 8 just because I think, since we're reviewing the first 11, I'll get to the rest here, but I totally dig this album. I think this is a classic. It's a very, very good album, and I think Voodoo, Sign of the Southern Cross, Falling Off the Edge of the World are 3 absolute classics. I think you can throw in the Mob Rules and Country Girl and even Over and Over. So there you go. This is an excellent album. I think when I think of Sabbath, I think of the Ozzy 70s Sabbath, but if you expand it a little bit more, man, you get these early Dio releases, and they're pretty freaking worthy as well. So I'm at number 8. I've got the Mob Rules. The title track is the Mob Rules, but at number 8 I have Mob Rules, good one from '81. Okay, coming in at number 7 from '80, the one before it, and the first one with Dio, but Bill Ward's still on drums. I've got Heaven and Hell. I mean, this is an absolute classic. I'm sure other people might have this far higher than 7, and I love this album. Neon Nights, great. Children of the Sea, my favorite Dio era song. It's one of my favorite songs ever. I mean, it's just got all these elements that man. Children of the Sea, the title track, Heaven and Hell. Guy Young's cool, it's got this cool breakdown. I think Lonely is the Word is, again, a great way to end this album. This is just another one produced by Martin Birch. The only one with this specific lineup, as Bill Ward would leave after the recording, but I mean, what can you say? I think some people might have this 1 or top 4 or something like that. I had it at 7, and I'll explain why later. But I think it's great. When I think of Sabbath, I think of these first 11 albums, and I definitely include the first 2 Dio albums in my listening to Sabbath. I think he's definitely part of Sabbath for sure. So there you go. Trying to go through these quickly so I can cover everything, but at number 7, absolute classic from '80, the first one with Ronnie James Dio. Again, Neon Nights, Children of the Sea, doesn't get any better than those 2 songs. The title track, Die Young, Lonely is the Word. Did I mention Lady Evil? I mean, pretty much everything on here is good, and a lot of this is classic. There you go. Number 7, Heaven and Hell. So that leaves the final 6. And by process of what I've gone through already, these final 6 are the first 6. Because I've always said, much like Led Zeppelin's first 6, they're great. The first 6 Sabbath albums are just all classics in their own way. So here we go. These could all be number 1s, by the way. These could all be number 1s. So I'm just putting it in an order that I think is the right order, but doesn't mean they're just all tied for first. So here we go. Coming in at number 6, I'm going to have Sabbath Bloody Sabbath from '73. This is their 5th album, and it's '73, and I've talked about progressive rock in 1973. And this is Sabbath really just branching out and getting very progressive. You've got Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, the heavy opening track, but then a National Acrobat Strange. You've got this Sabracadabra is cool and different. Killing Yourself to Live has a weird effect on the verse riff. Who Are You is just totally spacey and out there. Spiral Architect, one of my favorite songs they've ever done, and it's very progressive. You've got an orchestra, you've got these sound effects of people clapping and everything. So I'm just in a great album cover too. So just a big fan of the band at this point, just really going, okay, we've done the heavy stuff, let's start to expand our sound. And they really start to expand it on this one. And Rick Wakeman, by the way, any keyboards you hear on here, that's Rick Wakeman. Because apparently Yes was in the studio next door recording Tales from Topographic Oceans while they were recording this one. So there you go. Coming in at number 6, I'm going to go with Sabbath Bloody Sabbath from '73. Total classic album. Total, just a great album. Number 6. Okay, coming in at number 5, I'm going to go with 1975's Sabotage. This was the 6th album, the 6th and final one of their just perfect run of albums. This expands even further on the Sabbath Bloody Sabbath stuff as far as just being either progressive or just really reaching out there. This is as far as they reach. I mean, you come out with a Barn Burner, Hole in the Sky. We're listening to Symptom of the Universe right now. Just a very cool, like a speed metal, thrash metal song from '75 when nobody was doing that. But then it completely shifts into this cool progressive acoustic jam out. So it's really just the ultimate song. One of my favorite from them. Could be, it's definitely a top 10 song from Sabbath. Megalomania is cool. The Thrill of It All. Super Czar is an instrumental thing, but it's cool. Am I Going Insane is a weird one that they actually included on. It's the only one they included on their greatest hits. And The Writ. This is very dark, very experimental, very out there. It's just an absolute classic album. There's nothing weak on here. It's just, once again, like all of these first 6 albums, there's nothing weak. These are 6 albums where you put it on and hit play and let it go all the way through. So there you go. Their last classic album of the 70s. Their 6th album from '75, I've got Sabotage. Okay, these final 4, I frame this in a way because I think these final 4 pretty much solidify what Sabbath are at their core all about. I guess you could say these are progressive, but they're not. Whereas these were a little more experimental and it worked, and they're classics. I think these final 4 are their first 4, and this is where all the absolute classic of classic material lies. So at number 4, I'm going to go with their debut from '70. I'm going to go with the self-titled Black Sabbath. I mean, the title track alone with the bell and the rain, and it comes in with the big doomy riff. I mean, that is the birth of true heavy metal. I think we heard Behind the Wall of Sleep earlier. The Wizard comes in with a harmonica, but it just jams out. NIB starts with Geezer's bass line. Who doesn't know that one? And then on the other half of this, you've got Wicked World, Sleeping Village, Warning. Mine has a bonus track of some cover called Evil Women, or Evil Woman. That's pretty good. But this is a classic too. This could be a number 1. I mean, it might be the most vitally important album of their catalog. It's great. It's doomy, and I think they recorded it literally in, I don't know, was it 2 days? I mean, it was just in a very short period of time. But there you go. At number 4, and I think most people are familiar with this. What a creepy cover too. That picture there. But all classic songs. Black Sabbath, The Wizard, Behind the Wall of Sleep, NIB, and if you want to keep going, Wicked World, Sleeping Village, Warning. Great stuff. So their debut from '70 coming in at number 4, Black Sabbath. Okay. At number 3, from '72, going with Volume 4, their 4th one. Another classic album. They start to branch out a little bit here. I mean, you got Wheels of Confusion, Tomorrow's Dream. Changes is different for them. That's like a ballady piano one. FX is sort of strange. So you're starting to see little glimpses of some experimentation. Supernaut is classic. Snowblind is just an all-time classic. Cornucopia is great. Laguna Sunrise is cool. Again, another experiment, they're just progressing here as a band. They're just getting creatively better. St. Titus is Dance. Under the Sun is one of the heaviest, darkest songs they've done. I mean, that opening riff, the whole song, but Under the Sun, it's just one of the heaviest, darkest songs. I don't know what else to say about this. Once you get used to the production's a little rough on here, but once you get used to it, it just takes about 30 seconds, a minute to get used to it. Once you get used to the production, this album's just an absolute gem. I mean, if you said this was your number 1, I agree. I agree that all of these first 6 are number 1s. Hell, Heaven and Hell, if you wanted to say Heaven and Hell was a number 1, I wouldn't necessarily disagree with you there either. So there you go. Coming in at number 3, I've got Volume 4 from 1972. Okay, coming in at number 2 from 71, their third album, I've got Master of Reality. Just sludgy, doomy, heavy. We heard Into the Void earlier. It might be my favorite Sabbath song, period. Lord of This World is big and doomy. Children of the Grave is a classic. I mean, talk about early, not just heavy metal, but just fast heavy, like dark and everything. After Forever's cool. Sweet Leaf is probably the most infamous song on here. Starts with the guy coughing and goes into that big sludgy doomy. They're down-tuned. By this album, Tony Iommi had problems with his fingertips that he lost in an industrial accident when he was 17 or 18. And it was causing pain on his fingers, so he down-tuned his guitar for less tension on the strings. And the birth of incredibly doomy, dark, sludgy metal was invented further on this one. Solitude. This is just this cool hippie-ish one that the second one like this that they did in a short period of time. You got a couple of short instrumentals on here, like little acoustic things. Again, this is an absolute classic, number 1. It's very heavy and dark. I mean, if you want Sabbath to be dark and sludgy and doomy, get this one, because everything on here is like that, and it's all good. I mean, they got so much. Tony Iommi is just got all these massive riffs. He's just connecting them perfectly. And Geezer Butler and Bill Ward and Ozzy's doing his thing, and this is the lineup. Whatever it is, when these guys work together at this period of time, just everything they did seemed to work. And so there you go. Coming in at number 2, I've got from 71 their third album, Master of Reality. So at number 1, I think this was from 70, but it's their second album from 70, and their second album overall, I've got Paranoid. So starts War Pigs, 8 minutes. It's the one song they play a ton that I'm still not sick of. I love War Pigs. The title track Paranoid and the song Iron Man. Are we all sick of those songs? Kind of, but I'm not going to downgrade this album because I'm sick of the success of it. Those songs, I liked them when I first heard them. Electric Funeral, I mean, and Hand of Doom. How much darker does it get than that? It finishes with Fairies Wear Boots, which is probably my favorite song to listen to these days off the album, but just loaded. I think Planet Caravan is one of the coolest songs that you just, like Solitude, a Master of Reality. I think Planet Caravan is the best thing they did in that style. And then there's a shorter instrumental called Rat Salad, which is kind of spastic and cool. But this whole album, just from start to finish, is just an absolute classic. So you got War Pigs, Paranoid, Planet Caravan, Iron Man, Electric Funeral, Hand of Doom, Rat Salad, and Fairies Wear Boots. To me, this is just, forget how dumb the album cover is. This album is just an absolute classic. Let's see if we can get that famous band photo of those guys. So there you go. That's ranking the albums of the first 15 years, the first half of the band's career, the first 11 of 20 albums. So real quick to recap here. Coming in at number 11, their 7th album from 76, I've got Technical Ecstasy. Coming in at number 10, their 11th album from 83, I've got Born Again. Coming in at number 9 from 78, I have Never Say Die. Coming in at number 8 from 81, I've got Mob Rules. Coming in at number 7 from 80, I have Heaven and Hell. Coming in at number 6 from 73, I've got Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. Coming in at number 5 from 75, I have Sabotage. Coming in at number 4 from 70, I've got their self-titled debut, Black Sabbath. Coming in at number 3, I've got from 72, their 4th album, Volume 4. Coming in at number 2 from 71, I have their 3rd album, Master of Reality. And coming in at number 1, their 2nd album from 70, I've got Paranoid. And I didn't rank all 20 because 1, I don't own them all, and 2, I don't listen to the other ones a ton because as of, the band did this album with Ian Gillan, and that was a stretch to call this a classic Sabbath because Ozzy's long gone and now Dio's gone, and now you're under your 3rd vocalist. but I still thought this carried on the sound, and you still had 3 of the original members. Well, after the tour in 84, I guess about 84, 85, the band literally split up. And Tony Iommi began to do a solo album, and he got a whole new cast of characters. He got Eric Singer, who would later be in Kiss. He got Glenn Hughes of Deep Purple fame to do the vocals. He got a few other people, and it was supposed to be a solo album. Well, the label at the last second told him, hey, you got to put Black Sabbath on here. Well, if you listen to Seventh Star, it doesn't sound like Black Sabbath at all. And then after that album, they got another singer, Tony Martin, and another cast of characters. You know, no Bill Ward, not even Vinny Appice, not even Geezer Butler. So it's really just Tony Iommi and guests. And at that point, you're so far into the 80s that the sound, I don't even recognize this as Black Sabbath stuff. And they continued on, and you know, they did regroup with the Mob Rules lineup for 92's Dehumanizer. And they did regroup again in 09 for The Devil You Know, which they had to call the band Heaven and Hell. I don't know, there must have been an issue with Sharon Osbourne, but that's Black Sabbath to me. And they did that in 09. Sadly, Dio passed away about a year after it was released. And then in 2013, they regrouped with Ozzy, but not with Bill Ward. They had the drummer from, I can't think of his name, he's from Rage Against the Machine, but they brought him in, and they did one final album in 2013 with Rick Rubin producing called 13. So I would say after Mob Rules, and certainly after Born Again, it's hard to find anything that sounds truly Sabbathy, but there are a few albums. So if you want, I'll do a full ranking. I'll just say this. Instead of ranking all 20, I'll just tell you that my top 8, you know, for Mob Rules and Heaven and Hell through the first 6, those remain the top 8. But I'll give you my rankings from at number, well, let's just go with number 20. We'll start at the bottom. They did an album in 95 called Forbidden. They've got Ice-T rapping on part of it. They just sound like they're going for these hilarious styles. It came out in 95. It's cringeworthy. It's painful. It does not sound like Sabbath at all. So that's number 20. That's dead last. The other cringeworthy one, I think I mentioned earlier, from 86, Seventh Star. It just sounds like a really bad Tony Iommi solo album. I just can't find anything redeemable on that. Coming in at number 18 overall, I did have Technical Ecstasy. So it was bottom of the barrel, 11th on my list here. It's 18th on this master list. And then 17, 16, 15, 14. I think these albums are probably fine. They're well recorded. There are certainly a couple of decent moments on each one, but I don't connect with them. They don't really do anything for me, and it just doesn't really sound like Sabbath, or it just sounds like an imitation of Dio era Sabbath. But at number 17, I have Eternal Idol. I mean, I think Ancient Warrior was okay, but it sounds like Whitesnake meets a little bit of Dokken with some Dio vocals. I don't know. When I'm listening for Sabbath, that's not what I'm looking for. At 16, I've got Cross Purposes. It's more Tony Martin era, but it's from like 94, so at least it sheds the 80s thing. But again, I think it's well recorded, but I don't remember anything about the album. That's the problem with these Tony Martin era albums. He's a great singer, but sometimes you don't want he's a great studio professional singer, but sometimes you want something else. You want a certain style, and these songs just aren't memorable on Cross Purposes. At 15, I got Tear. If I'm going to listen to Tony Martin era, I'll listen to Tear from 90. At 14, I've got Headless Cross. That's probably the best Tony Martin era album in my opinion. But again, he's channeling Dio a little bit on that one. That's okay, I just don't reach for it too much. At 13, that's where Born Again comes in. At 12, that's where Never Say Die comes in. And then at 11, from 92, I've got Dehumanizer. That's when Dio and Appice returned with Geezer Butler. The band got back together, sort of. It's pretty good. It's a far cry from the albums they did in the early 80s, but it's okay. At number 10, I've got 13. That's the one they finally did in 2013, where they really channel like the first. I heard pieces of the song Black Sabbath, NIB, Under the Sun. They even do one song, Zeitgeist. It sounds like a Planet Caravan Solitude type song. So they're definitely trying to challenge that early era. And then at number 9, I've got that album they did, is Heaven and Hell, The Devil You Know, which was the other one with Dio and Appice in '09. Is it great? No. Is everything kind of slow and doomy? Yeah, but Adam and Evil and stuff like that on there, they're still cool. I just think, even though Dio's like, he's probably got cancer of the stomach at that point, so he's not able to totally do all the vocals, but he still sounds great on there, and it sounds dark. And so I dig it. So if I'm going to reach, the few times I reach for Sabbath outside of that 70 to 83 era, it's usually for the Heaven and Hell album, or 13, or maybe Dehumanizer. I almost never reach for anything from the Tony Martin era, or that one Glenn Hughes one. So if I am going to reach for anything other than the classic era, it's probably not Tony Martin. So what's left are just the few albums that Dio, the couple albums that Dio did after the classic era, and the one that Ozzy regrouped with him on. So there you go. That is covering Sabbath. Again, I focused just mainly on 70 to 83, which I think is the classic period. But I'm familiar with all the albums, and so there you have it. Oh, just what else do I have? I don't know if you can see back here. I've bought these CDs of the first 6 albums over and over again, so I got the CDs scattered throughout. Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath over there. Live Evil, great album. This is with Dio. They cover the 2 Dio albums plus some classic Sabbath. We Sold Our Soul for Rock and Roll was the greatest hits of the first 6 albums. I got the Black Sabbath, the Black Box, 70 to 78. This Past Lives album is great. It's got the Live at Last bootleg from like 73, some stuff from 70 and 75, a DVD from 78. So all that stuff is pretty cool. I thought that was worth owning. So that pretty much covers it. So yeah, did I discuss everything I have? So yeah, you got Live with Dio, which classic cover. Live with Ozzy. So there you have it. That is covering the classic era of Black Sabbath, but ultimately we sort of glossed over everything on the list here. So thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.